Okay, good evening. My name is Jeff Forward. I'm on the select board and I'm standing in for Jay Furr as the chair for this committee tonight. This is the first day of summer, June 21st, 2023 ARPA committee. Our ARPA stands for the American Rescue Plan Act. And what that is it was federal largesse to every community in the country. As a pandemic relief measure. It gave money to all towns throughout the country. Richmond's share of that was $1.2 million. This committee was formed to think about what to do with that money. This is kind of once in a lifetime money, that we'll never see again. This committee was charged with trying to understand what the community wanted. What were the possibilities to reach out to the community, get public input on that, which we have done. We've done quite a bit of actually public outreach, and then make recommendations to the select board on how to use that money. We've done some of that. This committee makes no decisions. What we do is we make recommendations, to the select board, who has the authority to make decisions on how to spend that money or how to fund any particular project that we come up with, which we've come up with several. I think we have made recommendations on about half. Does that sound right?
No.
It's about half, right? 600,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, 600,000.
We're under half. Yeah, we're under half, but
A little bit under half. A little bit under half. There's still some big shoes to drop. One shoe to drop is the town center, where we have another committee that's looking at the town center renovation. And they have not made a formal request of the ARPA committee, but it's in the works and it's expected. Another request that came to us very early on was to digitize town records, which we haven't come up with a number for that. And that's still kind of in the works. A big item in the community input that we received was on recreation. Recreation means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The closest we've come to that so far is to recommend spending some of the ARPA money on sidewalks. Not this sidewalk, but additional sidewalks, new sidewalks in town, which we have made recommendations on that. Expect to see some new sidewalks in town, which will be, I think will be lovely. But recreation has been a big piece. So we have not, we did get a request from the Recreation Committee about Volunteers Green early on, many months ago. It was not very specific. It was a dollar amount, but it was not very specific about what that would be used for. We deferred making a decision on that because it wasn't very specific. Carol Aboundy, a member of our committee here, has been working with Grace, your last name? Holbeth, on an idea for re-envisioning Volunteers Green. We have not seen that idea, so we do not know what it is. And we're not prepared to make a decision tonight on that in any event. But and there's been a considerable amount of public interest in the idea, even though we haven't seen it. What we hope to do tonight is to get a presentation by Grace. She'll go through the presentation, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions. So does that sound good to everybody? Does that make sense?
If we have comments to make regarding the agenda item of the proposal, would you like those to happen once the proposal is made, as opposed to like?
I think it would be, personally, I think it would be more useful afterwards, but yes, you are welcome to make comments as well as questions. And I think it would be useful for us to introduce ourselves. I'm, as I say, I'm Jeff Forward.
No, it's okay. You're fine.
Hello. Got it? Okay. I'm Jeff Forward. I'm on the select board. Jay Furr is technically the chair of this committee. He couldn't be here tonight. He's the chair of the select board as well. And why don't we go around?
I'm Molly Dugan and I was gonna say I live in Richmond, but hello. I live in Richmond. Carol Bounty.
Denise Barnard. I am on the board as a business representative. I also live in the Jonesville end of Richmond.
And
And Josh.
Josh Arneson, our esteemed.
Josh
town-
Arneson, town manager, also Richmond resident and related to this topic, co-president of Richmond Little League, or sorry, Camel's Hump Little League. So spent a lot of time at the park.
A lot of people spend a lot of time at the park. But the park, I would say, is a well-loved community asset. So with that, I'd like to
Yep.
turn,
Just before you turn it over to Grace, I just want to let everybody know how Grace got involved, if that's okay.
sir.
Is
That's fine.
the rec committee presented to us.
Mhm.
I offered to, I knew what Grace was going to college for, as a family friend, and I said, I know somebody who is working on projects like this through UVM.
Mhm.
Would you be interested in having me reach out to her? And the rec committee and the ARPA committee both agreed that it would be a good idea.
Mhm.
Grace then went to present at the rec committee, a draft version of it, just to get their input. And then that's where it's come back to the ARPA committee, but all the way along, made sure that that's what everybody wanted. And so helped her, introduced her to Pete Goslin and brought her to Josh, so Josh could see a version of the draft as well. So that's how all the pieces came together. This wasn't my project to begin with, not something that I brought to the ARPA committee. It's something that came and went, wow, this sounds like we could really do something, so. Let's go back.
Thank you so much, Kara. So I'm gonna share my screen, I guess is the best way to go about this,
Yeah.
you said? Perfect. Alrighty.
We have members of the committee on Zoom.
No.
I don't think so.
Can you guys see over there? If you can't, it's okay to move your
Yeah.
chairs.
So to answer the question that was in the chat, we're not going around the room to introduce everybody who's here. There's what, about a dozen people here anyways. Yeah, but you two will be able to ask questions and make comments after the presentation.
Awesome.
Okay.
Alrighty, thank you so much. My name is Grace Colbeck. I am a recent graduate from UVM. I just graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Community Centered Design with a concentration in Applied Design. I am born and raised in Wilson, Vermont, so right down the road. And yeah, so this project, as Kara introduced, came to me in one of my, it was called Design Innovation 2, that course. And we were given the project to redesign or reimagine a recreational space in Chittenden County. And growing up in Williston, I was lucky I had a really great community around there. And we had a ton of recreational activities and opportunities right in the Williston Town Park. And so a lot of my ideas here came from some of the Williston attributes that we have there. And I spent a lot of time actually in Richmond. Most of the time I'd come here for the 4th of July.
Mhm.
Because I will say you did have a way better fireworks show than
There you go.
Williston. I'm telling you when I said that. So that was kind of my introduction to Richmond. And I decided that I would take this course and use it as an opportunity to reimagine what Richmond Park and the Volunteers Green and Browns Court possibly could look like. I want to first thank the ARPA committee, as well as Pete Goslin and Josh here, as well as the recreational committee for Richmond for taking the time, especially on the first night of summer, to come in tonight and listen to this presentation. So thank you. Alrighty, so I'll just get right into it. So this was the map that I had made for my course, and it was just an aerial view. Wasn't perfect, but this is what I brought to my peers in my class as well as my professor. And we utilized this in a few different ways. The first being, we took this map and we listed a bunch of things that we thought we might want to add or move. And then I was posed with an in-class activity with other peers in the community center design major. And I printed out copies of this map as well as each individual piece of our map, which we called the puzzle. And I allowed each peer and classmate, as well as my professor, to rearrange the map in whatever way they see fit, to move pieces around to get more space, or just in general to just see what another configuration would look like. So without further ado, I'll move in. This is the reimagined map, a little more finished than that first one. If you notice, there is a nice blue outline around. I want to pay some close attention to that. That is a paved path that can be used for pedestrians of all ages, obviously, to come and use that instead of other areas in Richmond. So that could allow for kids learning to ride a bike, or even my grandparents that are needing to walk on flat surfaces to come and use that. So I wanted to really pay close attention to that, because of the accessibility that would be added if we did, or you all chose to implement that into the plan. Yeah, and aside from that paved path, I was also posed with an idea to put a gravel path next to it to really integrate other options other than just the paved path. So for people who are running, I don't prefer to run on pavement. They would have an alternate route that they could take. And after further discussion with Pete Gosling, who is with the highway department, he informed me that they would be more than willing to actually pave this path in the winter. So that would open up that opportunity as well for people to use this path, cross-country skiing.
I mean, plow it.
Yeah, sorry, yes, I did mean plow. I honestly don't know what I said then. I'll go back. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I will then jump into some closer up shots because there's a lot on this map that no one can really see. So right here we have the playground area. We are proposing, I, myself, and just my classmates, I guess, but mostly me now at this point, to integrate some of those black mats that Pete Gosling has in his, can you correct me if I'm wrong, where are those in storage? I think Pete may have told you.
I think he has them at the highway
The garage, I think.
town garage.
Yeah, so putting those mats down where the playground is right now, replacing the wood chips, which would also help with some of the river health and getting some of those things that we need to reintroduce every year or replace. And then we also were discussing as a class that there may be room for adding some play equipment for older children to play on, to give more opportunity for separation, just to help out those kiddos that maybe are still learning to walk, that don't want to be on the same equipment as older kids coming down from Campbell's Hump after school. Yeah, and then over on the left side here, it was brought to my attention how popular Gaga Ball is becoming. So I'll get some pictures on the next few slides to illustrate what this little shape is over here, as well as a ping pong table, which could be made out of recycled materials and cement. Let me just make sure. I have so many thoughts in my head right now. I'm just gonna make sure I'm covering everything. Perfect. Alrighty. One other thing I did notice, even just driving by, is that there's this beautiful sign for the Volunteers Green of granite, but you can't really see it when all the cars are parked there. So, possibly reimagining a new sign that would allow people to see what the park's name is and kind of get some more buzz over there. This lower left-hand corner, as well as the upper right hand, are a Gaga Ball pit. there are multiple options, a million different ways you could build or implement this sort of game. Recycled materials or plastic, wood, you can imagine the list goes on and on.
For people who don't know, Gaga Ball is like the young folks version of pickleball. It's not the same game at all, but it's as popular as pickleball is to the younger set.
Yes, and I will mention pickleball later, actually. In this upper left-hand corner is another playground equipment structure that is a little smaller, but I will note that the equipment over there, maybe could just use a little TLC. Doesn't seem to be unsafe, but maybe just a couple things here and there that could really revamp it, but also not replace at the same time to save, because I'm a huge fan of reusing and being more sustainable. So if it doesn't need to be replaced, why replace it? But if there was room, there's a ton of new structures out there, tons and tons to look through and go through and look at, but I just picked one just to grab some attention. I'll continue on though. All right, here might be a little bit of a shock because it was for me when a couple of my peers pitched it to me. But they said, what if we moved a T-ball field, which is the field that is over here normally and is right now actually, and put it over here to open up some more green space over in between the baseball fields and the playgrounds. There are definitely some repairs that need to be made to the baseball fields and T-ball field in general. So I think those could be prioritized, if not moving, because I know that is a little bit much to just up and move something. But it would allow for a lot of more green space. And I know that soccer is huge here, which would also open up some more room for some more soccer fields, which I know is huge. Yeah. I also thought of this pretty recently, but the dugouts over there are so nice. But I thought, what if perhaps we could integrate the school program, the art program to come down and paint them, maybe athletic themed or something, but that would really allow for two groups of kids or just kids in general to come down and look at these beautiful park features and add their own mark to it as we revamp. Oh, I skipped something really important. Sorry about that. So one of the beautiful things that I noticed over actually at the Maple Street Park in Essex are their pavilions. And so we imagined / I keep saying we, so I'm just going to stop with that. I imagined that there could be a pavilion that could be added over by the bathroom area, just because that is a great spot to have it. That could be an electric and power right to it. And that could also generate revenue. You could rent that out for birthday parties, barbecues, all of the above. Yeah, so here's some ideas. There has also been a new wave of solar panels that are being added to pavilions and parks. So that could also be a way to generate sustainable energy, which would be really great. So there's that. And also, I do really love the idea of adding a grill, because who doesn't love a good grill barbecue? But yeah, so here's some ideas for those. All right, and as we move down to those soccer fields, we have a dog park. I was visiting the site, which the volunteers green, and I was walking around taking pictures, talking to some of the locals there, and they were like, "What you doing?" I was walking around with a clipboard, so they were like, "Who are you?" And so I introduced myself, gave them a little spiel about what I was doing, and I asked them, "So why are you here? Why do you come here?" And a lot of them had a dog in their hand or on a leash and were like, "I come here to walk my dog." So a lot of people mentioned that a dog park would be a really great addition to the park and would allow for a specific designated area for dogs to go, which is also the furthest from the residential area. So keeping in mind lower noise and all of those things, just to be mindful of the people that live directly next to the park. Yeah. Also, the highway department did mention that there were some trees over there that probably needed to be cleaned up, but that they would be willing to help orchestrate and actually do the cleaning up as well. Alrighty. Fences of any kind could be used for the dog park, but I figured I would give some just to supplement some imagery for everyone. All right, moving over to that open space. I may add that I am a huge fan of the ice rink that is over here in the winter. I brought my niece here this winter, and that was a really, really fun experience. So I was wondering how we could actually use that space that was used for the ice rink in the winter, but in summer months. And then I really noticed there's no basketball here. So adding a basketball court may attract some new people to the park, which would be great to get some new faces there and just create some new connections. Yeah, so let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything there. Also, the band shell already has power there, so we could utilize that power source and actually light up the basketball court and / the ice rink at night, just for safety. And then if you notice in this lower part right here, there's a little hexagon, which is a changing station that I thought of. I figured that it might be useful just for the people that are in and out of the water all the time to actually have a designated area that they could feel a little more secluded in and comfortable changing. And then that's just some river access right there as well. Here are some images of some of the courts, one of which is actually in southern Vermont in that upper right-hand corner. That is converted, as you can see, into the ice rink in the winter. Alrighty, so moving back in to, this is right where the ice rink actually is in the winter time. As you can see, the space is a little lackluster of grass. So I figured this might be a good area to utilize just because we wouldn't be taking any of the great grass that's there and actually just adding it onto this area that we already utilize. And this is some images of the band shell. And I learned something really, really cool the other day, that this band shell has actually been imagined and was built to be the ground church. So it's kind of half done, as you can see, but I figured that this would be a good opportunity to finish that off, get those finished 8 panels around with 8 beams to finish off this stage area. And there would definitely need to be some landscaping that would add in there as well. Just there is a bit of a jump right now to get onto the stage, so just making sure that accessibility is of importance as well, just for all. Yeah, so there's that section. And then here are some of the benches right now that I recently took some pictures of. As you can see, some of them are kind of like actually going into the ground, so they're really not that far off of the ground. So it might be a little difficult for my grandmother to get up from if she actually sat down. So I figured we could mention that as well, just to bring some attention to the benches actually, as well as some like rotting wood. So I think some revamp there, and maybe over by the round church actually, where you have the concrete pad underneath, that would allow for a really stable structure and would prevent some of this sinking from happening in the future. Alrighty, and here again is just the overall picture of my proposed park map. I also want to emphasize this is just an idea, just a design. So anything and everything can be changed, moved, deleted, all of the above. But I figured I would share my design and just see if anything would be of interest and to help the community out to improve a really great space that you have. I do also have something real short about Brown's Court that I will include if that's fine, or do we want to take, yeah, okay, perfect.
Quickly.
So Brown's Court, which is right up off of Jericho Road, is another area that is used, a recreational area. So right now we have a softball field up there, as well as just a ton of green space. A little bit of a gravel parking lot is there right now. And after further discussion with Pete as well, making a actual gravel parking lot would be of interest and totally doable for him and the committee to do, or the department, I should say. So moving into the next sort of part of this proposed redesign for Brown's Court comes into pickleball. It's a huge sport now. So actually saw it on ESPN last night. So definitely really rising in popularity, especially to older generations, which I thought would be a great opportunity to get a space for these older generations as well as younger to come and play a new and upcoming sport. So I figured utilizing Brown's Court, because it's a little further up, a little further from residents in that park area down here and volunteers, would allow for kind of a quieter group of people to be up there. So just keeping that in mind. So 2 pickleball courts are right here, and then 1 tennis court, but could possibly be repurposed or used as a pickleball court if the tennis isn't being used. And then right to the left is that softball field that I showed in that satellite view. Although if you can see from before, there's actually grass in this diamond, and a traditional softball field actually isn't grass, it's clay. So revitalizing that field and maybe adding some clay would allow for, I guess, a more traditional version of softball to be played. And one more quick thing, an idea came about to add a restroom up there, because there are quite a bit of people that go up there and play. So having a restroom would be a wonderful option, and maybe even a concession stand in that to also generate revenue, which could be reinvested in keeping up with maintenance and all of those things. Yeah, I believe these are just some pictures coming up next. Again, just ideas, doesn't have to look like this, but just helps to get some pictures in everyone's mind. Here I was helped significantly with coming up with some numbers. Kara helped me out because although this is my major, I wasn't quite educated to go towards the finances side. I wanted to make sure I was getting quotes from people who could actually do these things. So here are some numbers. And if you see on this right side, highway assistance, that basically means that the highway is department is willing to invest significant amounts of money, take that off of
Not money, time.
time, excuse me, time to help out with that as well.
I'm gonna go through this for you guys, the finances.
You are more than welcome, yes.
Pete Goslin.
Carol, we should be quick because we're.
I will be quick, very quick. The ones that say yes, the accessible path, Pete Goslin said if he did the prep work and just had pavers come in, that's saving almost $100,000.
Mhm.
The next one down was installing the mats that we received for free from the Ben and Jerry's donation, the rubber mats for underneath the playground. The next one was the dog fence. And when Grace said help remove trees, if there's some downed trees that were the highway could help with not taking down trees. The other piece of the puzzle was down at the gravel parking lot that they could actually install a gravel parking lot for no cost. A couple of other key things in there to look at. I mean, there's some optional things that you don't have to do, but Pete had already looked at prices for replacing some of the benches or picnic tables. So those prices came right from Pete. And then the other thing was the band shell. And what she was talking about is finishing the other 8 sections of the roof, but coming down with posts. So it wasn't open. It was still open. It's just the roof part was finished with posts supporting the different things. So, and that is in that information we actually did get from Gary that he built it
Yeah.
to be like the.
So he originally envisioned it to have those.
He did, it was a totally different plan that never wasn't completed. So when this was discussed with him, he thought it was a great idea, that it could then be utilized as a, a pavilion rental space as well as still being used as the band shell.
Does he feel like it was backwards? You wish it?
I
We've
didn't,
heard
I
that,
didn't,
but
I didn't
you
go into
there?
that. I didn't ask him that.
Okay.
I
There's a
was very
story behind
sensitive.
Yeah.
But the last piece of the puzzle was in there. I think there's some tree removal and replacement potentially, along with some landscaping, and that number is very flexible in the sense of you needed to put enough in case you found any of those trees, because when Grace showed you the backside of the band shell, you could see that there was no grass on the bank there, all under those trees, and they're starting to grow together. So if any of those had to be replaced, or if any other trees, we wanted to make sure that we looked at all the numbers. So I helped her with a lot of the numbers and getting the prices from places that actually do work for Richmond, like the band shell person was somebody who did the library roof and worked on the band shell the last time it needed repairs. So I am not,
Well,
it's, go,
I
tag.
want to thank you. I mean, you clearly did a lot of work. You have a lot of ideas here. I'm trying to think about how best to manage the next half hour of our meeting. You have so many ideas that we could come up with plenty of questions for each idea, which I don't know if that would be a constructive use of time, because, this is a very, very draft idea that, so I think I would like to start with the committee asking questions, but I would encourage you not to be too specific, like more general questions or comments. And I'm thinking what might be more useful for the public, rather than, trying to come up with questions for each individual piece of this. It's almost like your comments might be more important at this stage for us to consider. Because I know that there's a fair amount of feeling about the park in general. Does that sound like a
Yes.
good way to proceed?
And I guess I just want to make sure that all the people that have come tonight have their time to say,
Yeah.
we meet, every other month. So you've all come out tonight, you've done your time, and I want to make sure that we are able to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I just see this personally as a shopping list in the sense of it can be things that are done in the future, but this whole project or anything about this would go through the select board and public hearing processes. So I agree with Denise. I'd like to hear what people have to say. So I'm.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
I don't have any specific need to share my thoughts or questions right now.
Okay.
I'm just seeing this for the first time. I'd rather make sure the public is heard.
And I'll reiterate that both within this committee and at the select board level, no decisions have been made on volunteer green at all. The only thing that we have discussed, both in this committee and at the select board level, is anything that would be done with volunteer green would have to go through a very robust public process with public input and which is you have a lot of interesting ideas that are stimulating for people to consider. So,
Totally agree. I feel like community engagement's huge. It's for the people. Let's hear them,
two things that I would mention relative to the the cost numbers would be very preliminary, I would think, that, it could be more, it could be less, but there's a lot of elements in here and the cost could be considerable. And so that would have to be something that we'd have to think about more than probably we have in ARPA committee money. And there would need to be other revenue sources. The other thing that I didn't see in there at all is anything to do with permitting. And did you investigate anything relative to permitting? Like, are you familiar with any of stormwater rules or any of that kind of thing?
I personally did not get into permitting, but I do know that everything that we would plan to do would meet all of the floodplain and all of those guidelines.
How
as
do you
well.
know that?
Oh, I looked into a little bit more of that with some of your healthcare, but also
Contacted the state.
yeah.
And also all of the stormwater rules as well? So stormwater is different.
We didn't do the permitting because if you start to take pieces of this puzzle and decide we're only gonna do one thing, then it would have been a waste of time to go in depth into that because you're gonna go public hearing, you're gonna decide what pieces are something you even want. So it would have been a waste of time to really delve into the permitting side of things
Okay.
until
okay.
you knew what you wanted.
Okay, so, the only thing that I would point out is that in addition to the cost elements there, this would need to go through, more formal design, and more formal permitting, including stormwater permitting, which is no small thing.
Along with grant.
And along with
additional
grants, there would have to be additional money. So, with that said, the way that this room works is there's a microphone up above on this side. So you can make your comments from, if you're seating over here. If you're seating over there, it would be better if you came up to the table because there's a microphone on the table. I would encourage people to keep their comments short. 2 to 3 minutes would be most helpful. And with that, would anybody have a comment that they'd like to make? I know that you're concerned. So state your name and if you can
There's
either,
one right above you. There's one right above you.
you can sit there or you can come up here if you'd like. Either way,
Either way,
either way.
standing here is good.
That'd be good. It's fine.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Jessie Heiser. I live in the village. Many of you are aware that I and other community members have expressed significant concern about new paving and infrastructure being proposed for Volunteers Green. This is one of the town's most treasured assets, and it's located in the floodplain. In fact, the more frequently inundated floodway by FEMA definitions. We have just newly paved a half acre in the parking lot in this floodway. In this time of climate change, increased flood risk, and increasing knowledge of the need and importance of protecting our waterways, would be wrong for our community to endorse significant additional paving and new structures in the floodway, let alone the maintenance and upkeep they would require, like sanding and salting in the floodplain. Even if there are workarounds of floodplain regulations, as has been suggested, encouraging the select board to change or exempt current floodplain regulations to make these proposed changes possible are not consistent with Richmond's desire to be a sustainable community. And they are not in alignment or consistent with the Richmond Town Plans statement in the resilience section to, quote, continue to strictly regulate development in the special flood hazard area. Secondly, equating more paving and infrastructure with improved community health is a false equivalency. On any given day, you may currently see soccer fields of all different sizes and configurations for young people of different ages, filling up the grass area in the green, or baseball practices spilling out into the outfields and the open space. Paving and built infrastructure will displace highly valued, flexible open space in high demand for soccer, baseball, kite flying, picnicking, frisbee playing, volleyball, and the countless other ways that people choose to recreate in this healthy, green, and largely undeveloped open space. People are currently voting with their feet by flocking to this place. The default should be protecting this beloved community asset, not dramatically changing it. I have significant process concerns about the pushing forward of this proposal. As I review past meetings and minutes, it is clear from those meetings and minutes that the direction of pressure and force is not from an upwelling of support and encouragement coming from the community to ARPA to add new paving and infrastructure to Volunteers Green. It is pressure and pushing of this proposal onto the community for Volunteers Green. This proposal is being treated and handled differently than any other proposal. In contrast to proposals from established community.
Is this relevant to the conversation? I mean, it seems like it's not being very,
There was a 2 minute.
forthcoming to the, what you guys have done. I applaud you as volunteers for all the work that you put in, and to berate somebody that's on this committee is not healthy.
Yeah, I hear you. I
And
hear
this
you.
wasn't my project.
So I think it would be good if you could wrap up.
From the Transportation Committee, the Richmond Free Library, the Town Center Committee, the Recreation Committee, and the Cemetery Committee. This one is a proposal being pushed forward by a resident of Richmond who is also on the ARPA committee and is actively voting on ARPA.
take offense to
proposals.
that.
What are you proposing to do with the money? That's
And-
what we're here to
and-
discuss. What are you proposing?
And directing.
What are
the
you
course-
proposing?
Hey, excuse me.
Please.
Excuse me.
And directing the course of the ARPA.
So
committee
Jesse,
discussion.
I would suggest that we are a committee as a whole. Kara is only one member of this committee and nothing has been,
Happy then to submit
okay,
those concerns about procedure and process to the ARPA committee and select board at another time.
Okay.
That's fine. I guess I would just like to say that you have before you since January 11th, the Recreation Committee's proposal. And this committee the Recreation Committee did not take on the elements of this proposal. Despite the ARPA committee
object.
members
They did
urging that.
I
they
think we've
price-
heard enough of this.
that they price out her elements and come back for a second ask and add more items to their proposal. They didn't load up. The main parts of the Recreation Committee's proposal, the refurbishing and repair or possible upgrading of the playground and addressing the much needed work for the band shell and other beautification around it, have had prior support, including support of the select board for the town to match funding in a grant application for those items. And while I and many others have concerns about how the playground will be refurbished, or surrounding elements like the donated synthetic mats,
so,
the primary content of the
Jesse,
current.
Jesse, that we only have 15 minutes left.
Okay,
We have other people
Then
here.
I respectfully ask that our committee please not further this proposal. And please vote on proposals coming from the community outside of the ARPA committee members and from established town committees. Including the existing proposal from the Recreation Committee.
Okay. So. Anyone else?
Go ahead.
Yeah, please come up.
You have to come up to the table, because there's no mic over there.
I said.
Yeah.
Welcome.
My name is Mary LaFave. My husband Wayne and I have been living in Richmond since 1989. We have 7 children. Little Elizabeth is the youngest. We love Richmond and it is a wonderful place. However, I'm a pediatric high-tech nurse. I've spent my adult life taking care of babies, children, young adults. Now I take care of the geriatric population. These people who have, as Elizabeth would call, diverse abilities. And I have to say that Richmond is one of the least accessible areas that I have visited. It's beautiful and there's so much positive things about Richmond. But when you have someone who is in a wheelchair or someone who has limited mobility, whether that's a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, there's no place for them at the volunteers green. I hear what you're saying. I respect your opinion, but we want to be an inclusive community. And that means infants in strollers. That means little kids trying to learn how to bike, but it means all of those people in our community that live their life on the sidelines, that can't run and jump and play, but they want to come to the green. They want to come to the farmer's market. They want to come to the 4th of July. Recently, my husband and I opened up our home and we were shared living providers to a little girl that I started taking care of as an infant. And she lived with us and she was medically fragile and spent her life either in her bed or in a wheelchair. And we would come to the volunteers green and there was no way for us to get onto the field. There was no way for her to be able to be inclusive and be a part of everything that was happening. So we would travel to the waterfront and we went on that bike path and we ate dinner there and we got creamies at Burlington Bay. Or we would go to Williston where we could easily access that bike path. And we could push her in her wheelchair. She could be with her sister Elizabeth at the park. That's where we went to watch fireworks. That's where we spent our money to go out to eat after and go get creamies. The Volunteers Green is beautiful, but it is not handicap friendly. And if you had that path, you could have people like Nicole that spend their life in a wheelchair could be a part of our community. People who are trying to age in place that are now in wheelchairs, or they have walkers or canes, have a safe place to walk and be with their community and be healthy in mind, body, and soul. I just think that that Richmond could do more to be inclusive to that group of people.
Okay, I really appreciate your comments, and I think we get it. Yeah, I think we get it.
I'm not a public speaker at all. And this is very new to me. So I'm Megan Andrews and I have one of the only childcares in Richmond.
Right.
There's two. To go to the park with infants is very hard because you don't know. First it was pea stone, now it's mulch. You don't know what's in that. You can't see it. You can't let them crawl around. They're going to eat it. Strollers are impossible to get through there. They're just not good. If we had a path around it, I've had parents who have handicapped parents, to go on the pavement of the path, to get off the roads, to get off the crowded sidewalks going through the town. Like you said, it's just not accessible. If we have children that are handicapped or anything, there's no, in Williston, we would go there. When we would go on field trips, we would go to the Williston Park because they have a separate, smaller area for toddlers than they do older kids. The older kids could go crazy on this side, but they're not running over the smaller kids. I myself, I do have pea stone, but I also have those rubber synthetic mats and they are wonderful. I highly loved your design. I also have a 15-year-old son who goes to the park, but he has, they might throw a Frisbee around. The baseball fields are taken. Those basketball courts would be awesome. I mean, if we're investing in our town, why not invest in our youth too? Have something for them to do down there, like the hockey rink, the rink down there in the wintertime is great. They go down and skate. Why not have the basketball courts, the pickleball courts? That's just
Okay,
my thoughts.
Thank you very much. I would encourage people to try to keep it to 2 minutes.
I can be really brief.
Good. Okay.
I don't think anyone's disputing about
Could you state
thinking
your
of
name?
other
Please?
people.
Could you state your name?
Oh, Lisa Lichtman in town. You did a beautiful job, but the key question, and please help me understand this and a number of other people, why are we building in a flood zone? Those of us who went through the flood, I'm telling you, that came up really fast. It wiped out a lot of stuff down there. It's eroding. Has anyone been down to check that? The erosion, the trees that are coming down from the erosion. And you know what? It's a volunteer park, but we only know one man who comes down sometimes and cuts and trims the trees out when they're blocking the pathway where you have to crawl over. So I think we have to consider who's going to volunteer. You can call it volunteer park, but there aren't a lot of volunteers. And there were probably 4 of us who go through with bags and pick up dog poop or drop dog poop bags. Who is going to maintain all these things that you want to put in? You need a lot of input, And as long as the floodwaters, and I'm not even saying like I read, we see after heavy flooding sometimes, heavy rains, it will come up halfway up the park. And when it recedes, it makes a mess. So you're going to have are crumbling after a spell. I mean, that you go down, if you haven't been down there, go down and look at the erosion that's happening there. And anything, any tarred place, I mean, I think it's great to have something for handicapped people, but Richmond isn't the best situation at the park for that because there's erosion. That's the basic thing that's going on. It's not that we're against anybody or anything, but the other thing is you put a lot of stuff in there for the green. It's a green park. You've got all these wonderful ideas for games and all this, but how much green space is left? Have you been down there? Any of you been down there like for a weekend and watched the people that come down? There were young people down there. They're not doing anything special. They're bringing games with them. They're sitting on blankets having picnics. They were all ages down there, and I'm sorry, it is not handicap. It's not great for handicapped folks.
Thank you.
But it's the flooding. It's
Okay,
the
thank you.
erosion. Top two things. That's the big concern.
Bruce?
Bruce LeBounty, I've been in Richmond since 1988. You've done a wonderful job of making sure our 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds have something to do in our park, but we haven't done anything for anybody else in our community, in our parks. The proposal would allow basketball for older kids up on Browns Court, pickleball for the really seasoned people that are still in it, and walking for people that cannot walk comfortably on a road, on Cochrane Road, which is getting a lot of our walking. It would relieve stress of Cochrane Road to get people into the park instead of being on a road, which makes it a lot less dangerous. I'll tell you, if I was on the select board and this proposal came in front of me, I would be proud to have that be done and to have drive by there or stop in there and see all these people playing there, doing the things there. I coached baseball all the way up through my kids. I spent endless hours in that park, endless hours. As Josh knows, baseball's endless. And I coached basketball for a number of years. And my kids would have dreamed to have a place to go play basketball in the summertime. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Is there anyone else there? John?
John Carter, I'm a Richmond resident. I visit volunteer feed almost daily year round. I'm psyched to see all the ideas put out there. I mean, some really cool stuff. And, you know, of course, any, first set of ideas, there, people just throw stuff at, and there's something you got to sort of fine tune or adjust the particular needs of the place. A few years ago, when we started planting more trees in Volunteers Green because the river is eroding the bank there and knowing that that narrow strip there is going to be gone in a few years to have the next range of buffers. Particularly the teams, the soccer and baseball were very concerned about any loss of space for fields. So we were in high tech as this. We rolled out a big map and we cut out little baseball fields, little soccer fields of all different sizes, and we had to move them around. And boy, it was tough to get in a little extra space for a little more trees and keep the field. That doesn't mean that the soccer leagues and the baseball leagues own those spots, and so I guess, sorry, to cut this short, a process, I think ideally led by the recreation committee that gets everyone there together and can figure out, prioritize what's the greatest needs with, and where can we bend, where can we do a little horse trading would help. Maybe some ground rules as to what's allowed. I know in the past, some talk about dog parks. There were nixed because supposedly we couldn't put any fencing, permanent fencing in the floodplain. I think that counts as a structure. I don't know if a basketball post counts as a structure, but it would be good to know that before people start getting too much advocating. But meanwhile, so in short, yes, great. It'd be great to see the town invest some money in recreation. I think the process ideally would go through the recreation committee before dragging you guys into like, give us cash, so that you don't have to do all the work, getting all the fine points vetted on your own.
Actually, the recreation committee sent us on to actually research the information of the pricing of things and stuff like that, that they didn't have the time for it. And two of the recreation committee members are not Richmond residents. So that became problematic. So I wanted to answer that question to you, John.
Okay, so
Thank
here
you for
before,
doing that extra effort on that.
so before we go on, it's almost 8 o'clock, which is usually I know. And so what I want to ask the committee is, would you be willing to stay a few minutes late? So that we could go through some more public comments, because we have a lot of interest in this, I can
Yes,
see.
and I don't, do these actually get recorded, Josh, these comments? Okay, I just wanted to make sure the people who were,
They do.
commenting there.
So is there anyone else here who would like to make a comment?
I have a question though
Mhm.
about the whole, I mean, I'm assuming that if, you know, if it went to the select board and then they made a decision that before you decided on anything, you would check with, I don't know who you check with, about the flood plain, right? To make sure that anything is doable.
Yes,
I can tell you that both this committee and the select board are nowhere near making any decisions about any changes yet,
Right.
right?
Oh,
There
I
would
think
have to be a whole lot more public process. And frankly, I don't know whether the recreation committee has the capacity to be looking at such an extensive proposal. So we would have to, you know, one of the things that I think we could talk about, and that would be useful for us to talk about for the select board, is process. You know, where does this go from here? This is not the right committee to be making decisions on the future of volunteers green. This is a very extensive proposal. But we could discuss what process we think would be appropriate. So that's just one idea.
So you would get input from somebody, whether it's an engineer.
the town has an engineer.
It would,
Okay.
this would have to
Doesn't
go
mention-
through a landscape architect, I think, and it would have to go through permitting and engineering and.
The town has all that. They did it for the sidewalks. They do it for all their projects.
And would the town vote on it in the end? If it's put out as, would you like this part as it is? Does the town, do the
The
towns?
town owns it now. I don't see us selling it, you know, so this is the improvement. The town owns Volunteer Green now. You know, so I don't see the town giving that up. So any improvements to Volunteer Green would be the responsibility of the town, and the town would own it, yeah.
But at any time, a town resident could put a petition forward to go forward with a plan and ask them to put it on the ballot on the said next event election.
So it looks like we've had public comment from here. We have several hands up. Betsy, you're up. Could you introduce yourself and please feel free to make a comment?
Okay, my name's Betsy Hardy. I live on the Jericho Road in Richmond. I guess my main comment is one of the things I really appreciate about Volunteer Green, among many things that I appreciate there, are that it is green and that green space gives a lot of flexibility. I think that's already been said, but I'll second that. And so I'm not so much in favor of the idea of a paved path around it. And I realize that you know, that it's hard for people with handicaps. I myself walk with a cane sometimes. But I don't think every town has to offer everything. And I know I go over to Williston and walk on the path there, and I appreciate it. And they do have a lot of facilities there that I think people in Richmond do take advantage of. And I don't think that's a bad thing for us to go to the town right next door sometimes. And I don't think we have to offer everything. Okay.
Thank you for your comment, Betsy. Colleen, I think you're next.
Hi, sorry, I just turned my sound back on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm Colleen Flaherty. I'm a community member and business owner in Richmond. Lots of great comments. I think Jeff, what you were saying before, I think it sounds like bringing it back to process at this point makes a lot of sense. How at this point can we sort of get more wide reached community input as to how this is going to develop moving forward. And I wonder if it's worth looking into. Obviously, we have this big floodplain concern and issue, which is valid. Is it worth looking into what things can actually go into a floodplain before we start talking about whether we want those things or not? One thought I had with the paved areas, if it becomes a problem, putting them into the volunteers green, is that something that maybe we could focus in investing in the Browns Court area, which is maybe outside of the floodplain? So certain things that folks would like to see that maybe we can't put into the volunteers green, or maybe don't want to put into the volunteers green, can those go somewhere else in the town to offer that same opportunity? For folks with disabilities and challenges in, walking on terrain that's not paved. I wonder if maybe also chatting with other organizations like Vermont Adaptive, or folks who have put in natural playgrounds that also do allow for wheelchair accessibility. Would those be other avenues to explore? I mean, I know Vermont Adaptive is building mountain biking trails in the Bolton area just down the road. So it's doable, people are doing it. I think there's other avenues that we can explore if we want to really embrace different modes of mobility as well as pathways. So those are just some thoughts that I was thinking of as everyone was talking. I think really it makes sense to sort of step back at this point and say, what can we put in at the volunteers green, and then what do we want to put in at the volunteers green as a community? And I remember surveys being put out a couple years ago. Maybe I just haven't been in the right place at the right time to hear about other outreach to the community, but I just wonder too how we're getting wider input from the community.
We haven't done extensive outreach on this particular proposal. I think it's fair to say.
Okay.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yeah.
Angela.
Hello there. Grace, that was a very extensive presentation of proposed, and I'm going to even use the word a la carte in terms of the features that you presented. I would like to take this opportunity, though there's been a lot of concern about the floodplain issue this evening, and remind folks that we've got a mountain bike walking trail all the way from, along the riverbank, all the way down Cochrane Road. And we've allowed an actual private company, UMIAC, to build a kayak ladder down at one of the pullout parks right along the river. So that's definitely in the floodplain. And that went to the select board for approval. So I just want to let folks know that there's stuff happening in our floodplain and the select board is approving it. I don't have any heartburn about a paved path for people that have diminished mobility in our town to be able to stay in the town. I mean, I think it's kind of, it's kind of sad that we would say to somebody, oh no, you need to go to Williston if you want to walk with your walker. That's just not the kind of person I want to be as a Richmond resident. That's enough. Thank you.
The only correction I would make, Angela, is we did not approve that ladder. In fact, we specifically didn't approve that ladder. It was more for liability issues, but the select board did not approve that.
I will say that it was approved by the DRB. As an
it was
approved
approved.
So the select board did not approve it.
Right, so it was an approved use by the DRB, but the select board then procedurally said we don't want it because of liability issues, but it was an approved use.
Okay.
So they're not putting a ladder in?
No. Okay. Sue, you look, I like your mustache, Sue.
We're using Susan's computer, obviously, Jeff. I'll try to be brief.
Yeah, you should probably introduce yourself, Ed.
Oh yeah, Ed Wells, Susan's husband. I too have spent a lot of time at Volunteers Green and kids played a lot of ball there, spent a lot of time doing that. And I think we're in our 30th year here in town. So it's a treasure that we've come to cherish, really. In my walk there last night down the path and around back by the road, it really struck me just how filled the area already is when you look at all the soccer fields, the nets, the baseball, stuff that's in there, and I was thinking, well, where we can put all these other great ideas, and I suppose you can find places for that, but the thing I really cherish the most as a resident of town, and I'm solidly getting into my senior years here, is I don't mind walking on grass. If it's wet, I put something on for that. I do cherish it as it is, and I hope whatever additions we make over there, we do it very judiciously and keep the character of the park as it is. That's my input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Caitlin McCray. Caitlin, did you put something in the chat as well?
Yes, I did. 1 minute, I will turn my video on here.
Okay. You should know that the chat will be recorded with the minutes.
Sorry, it's taking me a sec to get my tech agreeing with me. Of course. If there's someone else that can speak first, I'll turn my video on.
Actually, you're the last hand up at the moment.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have my video on, but I did put my comments in the chat, and I just want to say that I don't think anyone would want to frame a discussion in our town about environmentalism versus accessibility, because I think those are both values that, well, we're in a town meeting. I would say that those are things that our community both values. And just to say how nice it was to have shade at the playground this afternoon. And I'm new to this conversation and I haven't participated in the forums, but I would just say that I appreciate the process and the process of creativity, and thank you all for your work.
Okay. Very quickly.
I just want to respond to the issue of accessibility and differently able.
Frankly, I'd rather not get into that now, if that's okay with you. I have two suggestions. One is there's clearly a lot of interest in Volunteers Green, both one way and the other. The Recreation Committee does not have a lot of capacity to study a detailed proposal and to evaluate all of these different options. It would take some considerable research to look into these various.
I'm all set, Nathan.
Into these various different options, and it would take a fairly robust public process to take all of the community input, figure that out. It's really not appropriate for us either to do that because it wasn't our charge to do that. Where the money comes from is a kind of a different question. It's a different issue. So one thing, one of my suggestions would be is this is an issue to pay attention to. All of you folks have expressed enough interest to come to a meeting on a beautiful summer day. I would encourage you to keep your eye out for other opportunities to participate. And what I would suggest to the committee is we really don't have time to discuss any of this right now. But this is an appropriate, I think it would be an appropriate agenda item to talk about what we think we should recommend to the select board as a process. Not the specifics, but a process for evaluating this because we've got more information than the select board would not have this much time to deal with both this and the question. So my suggestion to the committee would be that we set this as an agenda item to talk about the process of how to digest all of this. And what can we recommend as far as a process to move forward? Does that make sense to folks? So, I was gonna suggest, we're going into this meeting, I was gonna suggest, hey, we're pretty much done. Maybe we don't need to meet anymore. But, I think it would be good to have another meeting to talk about this. So,
To talk about the process, so that we've heard the public, so do they have to come back and repeat what they've said tonight?
no, this is
I
all
want to
been
make sure
recorded.
that they understand what you're talking about here. It's not another meeting to be just like this one.
No. So what I would suggest is that we discuss what process should be used to evaluate this proposal and to bring recommendations to the select board. And I don't think this committee is the appropriate committee to bring any recommendation to the select board other than potentially a process.
And I think that the public would be, I know I would personally appreciate ideas that the public had about the process ideas going forward.
Sure.
So it's certainly appropriate for people to.
All of
weigh
our
in.
meetings are going to be public meetings, and so we should talk about when we should meet next. This summer. So another thing to know about ARPA. So this money has been allocated to the town of Richmond. It's in the bank right now. We have this money. We have allocated some. We haven't spent it, but we've allocated some to various other sidewalks and some other things. The feds, when they gave it to us, the instructions were at the time that we needed to allocate the money by the end of 2024 and spend it by the end of 2026. Okay, so this is not imminent. You know, we don't have to make a decision next week. And this could take some time. You know, figuring out, I think there's a lot of interesting ideas here, and I do see it as more of a laundry list than it is a complete plan, personally.
I couldn't agree more, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah. And there are a lot of ideas that I had never thought about. But I think that there are also significant issues, and there needs to be a considerable amount of research as well. So my hope would be that there would be a committee that would be formed. I'm not sure it's the recreation committee.
No, you can't with the other towns on.
Well, I mean, it's a discussion item and we can discuss it. But I'm not sure it is. And so there might be more volunteer opportunities for folks to participate in both the evolution of Volunteers Green or the way that it stays, the way that it is now. And there'll be more opportunities to give us input about what we should do about ideas like that. So, is there anything else you think we need to do tonight?
Can I just ask if it's the Volunteers Green piece to this, that's the hot topic, if there was any ideas for Brown's Court that anybody had any, I just was curious, because I understand the floodplain is Volunteers Green, but Brown's Court is not in the floodplain. Is
Again, I
that
don't
going through
think,
the whole same process, and do you keep them together is all I'm asking, if that's.
I think it's all fair game. I don't think we needed to discuss it tonight. There is nothing imminent. And I do think if a separate committee was formed, the recreation should be in the mix. It is one of the things that has come to us as the ARPA committee is a lot of the suggestions that we got from the public input revolved around recreation.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
That was
and
majority of the
so I
list.
think, it's incumbent on us to come up with some ideas to give to the select board and how to move forward on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's us.
Well, I was just curious. I wanted to make sure I heard everybody. Perfect. Nice. So do you want to pick a date, Jeff? Are you looking at your calendar?
Date. So we have met. We've met, there's been times when we've met twice a month. There's been times when we haven't met in a particular month. I think we've been, about a year
Can
and a
you
half.
pick a date?
I know that I'm away at the end, the last 2 weeks of July and then the first week of August. I'm gonna tell you. we want to meet,
So you want to go into August?
it would seem August would be appropriate. I
So
don't
we're gonna,
think,
we're gonna make sure, are we gonna try to make sure everybody can be at the meeting? If we're basing it based on when your vacation is?
well, we
and
just
when
work
you're
with what we've got right here, right now. We do have a meeting scheduled for, August 9th. I'm not gonna be able to make that.
here. Can you make August 9th?
No, because the BCA is starting to hear their appeals that night. Jeff can't make it.
Yep.
Other select board members can't make it.
Okay, and then I think the when is the, Josh, when is the DRB meetings? What Wednesday night of the month?
Looking, they are second Wednesday, and I think they also have the fourth
nice.
Wednesday usually reserved, but they don't always use it.
The 16th is open for me, August 16th. What does that look like for others?
16th,
I can do it.
16th, 16th.
Okay.
So there would be a planning commission meeting, but they've been virtual lately.
Yeah.
So there just might be a room issue, but we can always be over there if need be. I think tonight we needed to be here, but that next meeting probably goes tomorrow.
Okay, so the proposal is to skip July altogether, and
Yep.
to do, August 16th. Is that okay?
That's the date. Yep.
Okay, is there anything else? So we did not approve the minutes,
No. we'll do
from the
that
previous
then.
meeting. That's okay. And I'd just as soon defer that to next meeting anyway.
Yes, okay.
So thank you for staying late.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Any objections? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very much for coming, and we do really appreciate your.
Thank you so much for your time.
A lot of interest. This is, I did say, this is the most well-attended meeting.
Grace, I'm sorry you're not giving credit and it was being put on me. You did a great job.
Thank you, Kara.
It was you.
No.
Yes,
Idea
Grace.
is kind of confused.
Yes, Grace, you did a great job.
Thank you, Angela.